Please listen carefully.
Well, hello, universe, and welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Kristy Jansen.
And I'm Summers McKay.
And we're part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring new reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to one focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy podcast. Today is Tuesday, the 9th of March, 2021. Good morning, Kristy. How are you?
I'm well. I'm really well. I feel great. I did a workout this morning, so I've moved. I've done my breathing. Yeah, so I'm happy. I feel great.
Well, you know, it's been a few days since everyone here has heard from you. Tell us how your adventure into the oasis of human contact is going.
I'm feeling better every day, honestly. And what's interesting that I'm starting to realize, and I think that this is probably being experienced by many, many people around the country, around the world, is that I was in a survival mode. And being sort of cloistered in the house, even if I'm with people who I really love and I have affection there within my, small household of 5, having the sort of it's almost like normal life here within the confines of my extended family right now. It's a different level of relating, and it's a different level of relaxation. And I realized just how much I've been in survival mode this last year.
Yeah, very much so.
And especially, I think, the last few months, this being separated over Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays and, I don't know, like a low-level depression. So there's something about reconnecting to my, deep friendships and my deep family relationships that makes a difference. And having little kids around again. I mean, teenagers are cool, but little ones are so much more interesting to just observe and just reconnecting. So but I feel every day I feel a little bit more like I remember who I am. So I know that's a deep thought.
No, I think everyone has really been in this kind of a survival mode. And I know that as your partner at the Optimist Daily, I have sensed that you really have been kind of just making it through. And it was so clear that you missed that human contact. And I know that the world really misses a lot of that human contact. And I'm just very grateful that you are sounding a little more like yourself and that you're lifting your mood a little bit and that, just acknowledging when we are approaching a depression. You and I were talking about the topical news of the decade right now, which is the Meghan and Harry interview. Mm-hmm. And, her acknowledging her own depression during pregnancy, I just think it's so important that we do talk about that and that we do talk about our own mental health. I experienced a pretty deep depression at the beginning of my pregnancy as well. And, just knowing when you are depressed and knowing that it is important to take measures to acknowledge it and to heal is, mental health is so important. And I'm really happy that your mental health is lifting.
And I think part of what's so important about acknowledging it or just being truthful is that destigmatizing having a rocky emotional relationship or, and clinical depression is nothing to laugh at. It really is nothing to laugh at. And the anxiety that a lot of people are starting to feel. I mean, now that we're looking at reopening schools and having kids go back to school, I'm just wondering how they're going to be doing going back into the classroom environment after this year of being separated. For many kids, that's going to be fantastic, but there's going to be a lot of social anxiety that everyone got a breather from, And I mean, I feel a little agoraphobic sometimes when I'm going outside of my little house. I'm a socially active person in most of the time.
Yeah.
So to be a little suspicious of people or unsure, how do you say hello in a proper way? Like all of those kinds of things makes me awkward, and that's going to be interesting to help our kids through as they rejoin their classmates.
So we had an interesting experience, as always, topical that you bring this up, because on Sunday we were with my parents and there's a little playground near my parents' house that we go to. And playground rules for toddlers are a little bit loose, right? You keep them as socially distant as possible, but the truth is toddlers are little vectors. They just run around and they try to hug one another. It's what they do. And the parents are all wearing masks and everybody's, paying attention, but it just is part of the deal. Well, Brennan, there were some older kids who were in a family pod that was very, very COVID conscious, and the parents had really cordoned themselves off, and the kids were playing and they had balls, and one of them threw the ball and it went near Brennan, and she picked it up, and these kids, who I think were probably 8 or 9, so not very young, really just started yelling and screaming like, "Mom, she touched our ball. What do we do? What do we do?" And they were very stressed about the fact that another person outside of their pod was touching one of their toys. And she threw it down and she ran away, and she ran to me and was like kind of confused. And then I guess yesterday when she was at the park with her nanny, Evelyn commented that Brennan wouldn't play with any other kids. She was scared to go around other kids. So just that one experience of her system being a little shocked. You're absolutely right that there is this next chapter of how we're going to gently bring ourselves back together as a community, that I think, we should certainly be exploring that from an editorial standpoint on the Optimist Daily, because we don't know how to interact with one another anymore. It's been a year.
It's a muscle that has not been exercised very much lately. And the awfulness of this experience, the isolation that has been the result, has been very painful. Yeah. And, I can go and talk about the story that I wanted to highlight, because it kind of touches on this.
Let's switch gears and talk about ways that we are beginning to reconnect with one another.
Yeah. So the article that really touched me, because I've been thinking about how important it is to have that human connection and that feeling close to other people, even if it's just a simple interaction. The headline reads, "Research, the power of a single phone call." And this is from the Building Community section on the Optimist Daily. And it's an article that's about a study that was conducted by some researchers at the University of Texas at Austin, where you're headed, that it shows that a single phone call a day, even just a phone call from a stranger that's a positive, just friendly check-in, can alleviate feelings of depression and anxiety for people who are experiencing isolation, probably for all of us, honestly. And the research was collaborated with Meals on Wheels in Central Texas, and they were studying how simple outreach strategies could improve the lives of those living alone. And the reason they were partnering with Meals on Wheels, because a lot of times seniors who are a little bit reduced in their ability to take care of themselves, they'll sign up for the Meals on Wheels, and then they get food, which is great. And that's super important to have good nutrition. But almost as important is having people around you and having the social connection, right? And in this last year, when we've all been sort of keeping away from other people, and, community centers have been shut down, the malls have been shut down, going to a cafe is out of the question, especially if you're an older demographic and you can't, safely be around people. But so the isolation of the pandemic was the perfect setting for this phone connection experiment. And they recruited 240 adults that ages range from 27 to 101, but more than half of them were over 65. And then they had young volunteers, so they're probably college students between 17 and 23, making phone calls to the participants. And the callers were trained in empathic conversational techniques. So they definitely had a more intentional message in how they were treating these people. They weren't just being brusque, or it wasn't just a perfunctory phone call. It was a conversational call. And they placed at least 2 calls a week to each of the assigned participants. And the measurements in their mental health indicators before and after the study found that those who had received the calls, on average, there was a 16% decrease in loneliness measures. Anxiety dropped by 37% by the end of the study. Mild depression dropped by 25%. And that's significant numbers.
Right.
By just a phone call every day. Yeah. Sunshine. Yeah. They call them sunshine calls. They're frequent, short check-ins. It's just saying how you're doing. Just having a little bit of personal interaction, even on a phone, makes a big difference.
Well, and, in this age of text and instant messaging and all of that, the idea that, so many people are kind of afraid to pick up the phone and just take a phone call, right? And you get out of the habit. And this is such a good reminder to get back in the habit and maybe the takeaway for everyone listening is, just figure out somebody in your life who probably could use a phone call. And maybe you can't do it once a day, but if you could call them once a week or just have a real conversation with a person, it will really kind of lift not only the recipient, but probably you as well. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of lifting, right? Lifting societies and lifting community, not only does human connection improve mental health, but the ability to know that you are safe improves mental health. The headline that I am choosing to talk about today is a follow-up to a story that we continue to cover. The headline reads, UBI Success, Updates from Case Study in Stockton, California. So earlier in 2019, we shared how in Stockton, California, they were launching the country's first universal basic income experiment. Former Mayor Michael Tubbs set the program in motion. And basically for 24 months from February 2019 to February 2021, which is funny, right? Because of all the things that have happened in that time frame. But the program is nearly complete and the results are in that basically indicates
from the first year.
For the first year, right. That indicates that UBI can already be deemed a success. So of the randomly selected participants, 125 participants at or below the income level of $46,000, they were given a no strings attached $500 stipend each month. There was a control group and those who, control were not given and then another group was given $500 a month. Full-time employment levels in the UBI group grew faster than the control group. Full-time employment went from 28 to 40% in the first 12 months, compared to just 32 to 37% increase in the control group. Those who were receiving universal basic income also reported higher levels of emotional satisfaction, mental health. One participant said that this money allowed him to reduce work hours and dedicate extra time toward earning his real estate license, so moving into full-time stable work. Basically, we know that raising the minimum wage improves mental health because financial security is a primary factor in reducing stress and anxiety. And I just love that this experiment is putting data behind the hypothesis that universal basic income can work and will actually increase incentive to productivity versus sometimes where it's suggested that it reduces productivity.
I think that's super important because the argument against this kind of direct financial support, and we're hearing it right now with the child credit
right
that they're talking about that will be included in this COVID relief bill if it gets through the House now and the president signs it. But the argument against it is usually that it disincentivizes people from actually working. Yeah. And I find it so interesting that the people who were in the recipient group who received the $500 stipend are more likely to have gone into full-time employment compared to the control group. I just think it totally shows that argument is false. It's a red herring. And in fact, because these people their anxiety was reduced, they moved from being in a desperate situation to being able to take a step back, earn a real estate license, which would actually improve the outcomes later on. I just think this is so important to keep studying this.
Well, there are a lot of other great stories that we're going to continue to follow about universal basic income and overall lift to society with improving minimum wage and improving mental health. And we want you guys to improve your mental health on a daily basis. So some other headlines that you can read on the Optimist Daily to get that lift include Fiji's coral reef once again boom with life after cyclone destruction. Critically endangered harlequin toad bred in the UK for the first time. I love the harlequin toad. A new vaccine eliminates and prevents recurring UTIs. That's actually really exciting.
It's really exciting for a lot of women who've experienced that a lot.
Yeah. Right. 7 strategies to jumpstart a zero waste lifestyle. I am determined to start a zero waste lifestyle when we are in Austin, so I will be reading that one. There's an interior designer helping divorced dads settle into singlehood. And let's see, what else do we have, Kristy?
There's a tiny truck who's bringing vaccines to those who can't travel easily, and that looks like it's a little electric truck. There's a trivia quiz that helps people get rid of marine plastic pollution. And then there's also a unique experiment that a shelter is putting together in Minneapolis. A nonprofit shelter is creating a first of its kind village for those who are experiencing homelessness. That includes tiny homes and having an actual private space secure.
That and so much more is available on the Optimist Daily. I've got to run to another meeting, so let's wrap it up. Thanks everybody for listening. We promise to continue to share positive solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in this changing world and ensure it is changed for the good. Consider becoming an emissary on theoptimistdaily.com, and for just $5 a month, support reader-funded independent journalism. Let's keep the Optimist Daily free to all who need it, supported by those who can. And Kristy, welcome back. It was lovely to have you on the update today.
Thank you, Summers. Nice to be here.
See you guys tomorrow.